Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. This is Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper live at State Farm Center, where an early morning tip-off did not go well for Illinois. 82-72 upset win for USC, which entered as a 14-point underdog. But without Kasper Sakashonas for a second straight game, you could feel it this time, unlike the game against Penn State, as Illinois struggled offensively, shot 37% from the field, 21% from three. But most importantly, Derek, couldn't stop anybody at the rim as Desmond Claude goes off for 31 points, gets the rim at will. Wesley Yates, 15 points on just 8 field goal attempts. Illinois out-rebounded. They were one of the best rebounding teams in the country. They get out-rebounded 37-34 and also outscored in the paint 44-30. Derek, we were waiting. We thought this team could be a little bit up and down. This was a down after a big up against Penn State.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was something that we talked about here recently. Are we putting the process behind us with this team? And certainly when you're missing a lottery pick point guard, that has a decent amount to do with not playing up to your potential, but just kind of a sleepy performance from Illinois. And that was part of it. USC was the hungrier team, the tougher team, more energized. And defensively, yeah, it's going against where Illinois has really established themselves as one of the best in the country at defensive rebounding, and they gave up 9 offensive rebounds and some second chance points that were costly, especially down the stretch when you're trying to claw back into that thing. And then at the rim, I mean, been singing their praises, deservingly so, for how tough it's been for teams to score at the rack against them. 19 buckets at the rim for USC in this game, and it's a team that, outside of a couple of guys, really doesn't have very many shooters, and you can kind of afford to congest the paint and make it tough on them to find driving lanes. But Des Claude killed them, and he went at pretty much everybody on Illinois' roster today. It started with Benham Rickhouse, then Trey White, then Kyle, and he got a couple switches on to Merez, and just felt like Illinois was not good and being able to provide help around the basket. And I know that we'll talk about it. Brad wore a lot of the blame today, talking about some of his schematic shifts and whatnot. And I thought it was interesting looking at USC. Number one, I mean, it doesn't take away from this being a bad loss. This has been building where they've been challenging some good teams and just couldn't do enough to get over the hump and win it. And obviously they did today, but they have some good mid-range shooters, some guys that can go to the basket, and Illinois just couldn't stop the bleeding with Dez in particular. And then offensively, too many missed threes, especially at home, too stagnant on a number of possessions, some bad shot selection, and definitely KJ's playmaking, steady hand, and being able to make life easier for other people. They missed that today for sure.
Yeah, I started to hear some murmurs. You see some comments, and I think this is a very small collection of people saying, I kind of like the way this team plays without KJ. And I'm sitting there going, are we not watching the same basketball? Listen, it was a great win against Penn State. You could see, like, without KJ, they all stepped up, right? And we saw this last year when Terrence Shannon goes out. But what we also saw is Illinois kind of got blew out at Purdue before like a late comeback, and then a loss to Maryland a week later without Terrence Shannon. You miss those guys at some point, the steady consistency of them. And I just thought they needed a calming influence offensively at some point. And, Colin Boswell had 6 assists, but he also had 6 turnovers. And I thought some of his shot selection, pulling up for some of these threes early in shot clocks, were as good as turnovers. So I just thought they really missed him. But I felt like they missed him as much defensively because they didn't have big bodies in that backcourt to kind of check Claude. And we'll talk about, how Brad Underwood kind of adjusted in that game and it didn't work out for him and he owned it. But this is why lottery picks matter. This is why missing a star player matters so much, because it just gives you so much consistency. And for Kasper, it's really been both ends of the court for him to add to it. But he just makes Benham Rickhouse's job easier, and I thought Illinois really struggled to get him the ball at times. Kasper's does that. And then Ivasic was kind of a non-factor offensively tonight. We'll talk more about him, but Kasper's does a lot of those things, and you got one magic game without him. You need him back. Like, for you to be a really, really good team, just like with Terrence Shannon last year, like, you need Kasper Sakashonas.
Absolutely. And it was a rough night for Kylan, who's capable of better, certainly. But he's had his struggles shooting the ball this year and was loose with it in terms of some of the passes that he made, or just, lost it, getting raked it out of his hands at times. And USC was being active with their attempts for steals when guys would get inside the arc, and he just missed some reads. There was one play in the second half where he drives and draws two as he go into the rim, and Perez is open on a little dump off, but instead Kylan throws it to the corner and it gets picked off, and he just was struggling to command the offense and quarterback and get the ball where it needed to go and open, like you said, open things up. And I agree. I mean, you said it. You called it out of a timeout, which they did. They went to Ben and he made a three. But only getting him 3 shots in the first half was something that, for an offense that could use getting the ball to guys that were going to make them. I mean, they took a lot of threes, but he went 2 for 3 in the first half, and you would have liked to get him a lot more looks than that ultimately. So that was something that certainly that KJ provides for him, for Tommy too. And that's obviously not to entirely excuse Tommy, who just needs to be more forceful around the basket for a guy that's 7'1", and Will made a really nice pass to him on a cut. I credit Tommy for making that cut to get to the basket, but then he blows the little bunny around the basket. I thought too his help defense around the rim at the other end was really non-existent, and just had some tough stretches where Brad said he lacked focus today. I think he just lacked physicality, energy. Merez certainly played really hard. Merez did miss a couple baskets too at the offensive end around the hoop, but thought he at least gave you the tenacity that you wanted. So certainly with KJ, he stirs the drink. He makes it go on offense. Wondered what Illinois' decision would be. Not obviously, of course, it's not just like, hey, we're going to scheme based on the opponent that we have today and the stretch we have coming up next week. That's not the sole factor of this, but he practiced yesterday in some capacity. He played 5-on-5 up and down. I know that for sure. Saw it with my own eyes, to be completely honest with you. And not to say that means he's 100% and isn't experiencing any discomfort or anything, but wonder what that decision would be today. And if Illinois could get away with resting him, if that would be the decision. And obviously they didn't, but his return is very important as you go to Indiana and Michigan State next week for sure.
Yeah, you thought maybe you'd get away with one if you wanted to hold him out, if it was really close of like, hey, should we play him or not? But this is why the Big Ten is hard, because USC was hungry. They were the tougher team. They played harder today. And despite, I'm glad Musselman brought this up, it was 9 a.m. Pacific time when this one tipped off. They were more ready for this game. Right, like their body clock's on a different time, and they're dealing with everything that's happening in LA right now. Musselman talked about that, about how his staff, and he's got a player from LA, and all that. Like they're dealing with real world stuff, and they came in more focused and tougher today. So I give them a lot of credit. But Derek, let's talk about the defense. Like Desmond Claude, 31 points. At one point, he was 7 of 7 to start the second half, and most of it was just at the rim. Wesley Yates, 7 of 8 from the field for 15 points. Illinois had no answer and couldn't stop anybody. And this is kind of like, where'd this come from? Because we were singing the praises of the defense. And then today we were kind of shocked. Ben Humrickhouse started the game on Desmond Claude, and Claude got a few buckets on him, and Brad kind of made a shift there, but they never really had an answer for him the entire game. So what did you make of that? Because Brad said this was on him, basically saying he should have stuck with Ben. He should have stuck to force tough twos rather than at the rim things. Use length on Claude, who's 6'7", big body, tough for Kylan Boswell and Dre Gibbs-Allhorn to deal with. And he said he should have stuck with Tomislav Ivicic just to give him length at the rim, even though he wasn't very good defensively today. So what'd you make of all of that?
That was an interesting approach by Brad. I'll be interested in going back and watching some of the differences and what it looked like as far as the game plan goes. Des Claude, when you have Ben, and I understand this point about it, is he's not a three-point shooter. He can make occasional threes, but he's like a 26% three-point shooter on his career. Now, we did see a guy in AG make 3 of them, and he had 2 all season. So guys can step up and make shots, but one thing that flashed early was Claude got a mid-range pull-up that Ben didn't get there to contest, and had a couple baskets at the rim in the first few minutes as well. And I think that paired with then AG kind of doing the pick and pop thing changed some of how Illinois decided to guard him. And they went with some 5-way switching to make sure there wasn't that angle coming off the screen, but also to account for some of the outside stuff. Again, Brad was really holding the accountability on his shoulders for a lot of that. I was surprised that we didn't see Kylan, because Des Claude's their leading scorer. It's kind of been pretty obvious for Illinois that, hey, if especially for a perimeter guy, that a team's best player will draw Kylan Boswell, even Brooks Barnheiser, for as big as he is.
Right.
Yes, Wesley Yates has been coming on strong for them. He scored at least 17 points in their previous 3 Big Ten games, so I think he may have solved him in the early going. But just to cut off Claude's drives and make him settle for some of those pull-ups, even if he can elevate over you and those type of things. But I say that, but also Kylan had some possessions on him, and Illinois couldn't stop him. And Trey had some possessions on him; they couldn't stop him. There was some times where Merez was in the area, even as a second defender, and he bit Merez into the air at one point and finished, or he got him for some free throws, and he had some and ones around the basket too. So nothing they threw at him worked. I think one thing that Illinois has constantly not done with people is blitz the ball handler with ball screen stuff. They don't want their guys in rotations. They want part of them limiting threes on teams, or just breakdowns in scramble mode, is that they don't do that. But it might have been a good idea for a guy that goes over 30 to get the ball out of his hands. So it'll be interesting to see how they pivot from this. There was constant dialogue on the sideline. Like at one point in the first half, Brad turns to Hamer and is like, "What are we doing? What we're doing is not working."
Yeah.
And there's some different chats, it seemed, that as they were on the fly trying to figure it out. Brad blames himself for trying to kind of adjust and tweak. He maybe should have just stuck with the original game plan. I'm not entirely convinced that Ben would have solved all ills as far as that goes. But with 6'9" and walling up at the rim, maybe he just would have been, hey, if you want to go to the basket, you have big body right there. Otherwise, take all the pull-up twos you want. I think that's kind of what Brad was getting at.
I find it interesting, like, because we kind of talk like, what's Brad going to be like after a loss, right, in the press conference, and more, it seems like he does take ownership of these in the immediate aftermath. But then I'm interested to hear what he says Monday, and I think he's really going to focus on the rebounding, Derek, because Illinois was one of the best rebounding teams in the country heading into this game, and they got out rebounded by a small. They are physical and big on the wing, but they are small in the front court. And Tomislav Visic had 3 rebounds tonight. Trey White had 4 rebounds tonight. Humrickhouse had 5. I'll give him credit. Boswell had some errors tonight, but he got after the glass with 8. Merez had 8, but just not a lot of rebounding from this team. Will Riley only 1 tonight. Like, I think that's going to bother him more than anything, because it just felt like the tenacity and the physicality was all on USC. All those 50-50 plays were kind of really going their way. So I think that's what he's going to tear into. Maybe he keeps owning the defensive part, but I just thought they got out toughed, and that's something that doesn't sit well with Brad Underwood, obviously.
No, and I expected him to do more of that in the post game. And not to say that he's not doing that behind closed doors. They didn't do it in the locker room right after the game, or they won't do it in practice tomorrow, or leading up to that Indiana game for sure. But you do have to kind of gauge kind of what message you want to cross, or how you're trying to just judge what the fan base's reaction is versus your team's and whatnot. So it was a game, obviously, he felt like they shouldn't have lost, and he wore it on him. But no doubt that it was a noticeable difference. And look, USC, although you make a valid point about the 9 a.m. for them and all that they've been through, but their hunger showed, and Illinois just was lackluster, and then kind of shell-shocked as it got deeper and deeper into the game, and they were trailing and at home for a good crowd in terms of number. It just was hard for them to get into the game because Illinois was kind of lackadaisical, and obviously don't have the Orange Crush here either. So, and USC really doesn't, even though 9 offensive boards doesn't like jump out as many as maybe 15 would or whatnot, it's not really in their makeup to offensive board. I think they're in the 250s or whatever, if I'm remembering, in offensive rebounding. So it's not something that they hang their hat on, but it was just, USC's was more hungry, was making more the physical effort plays, and the Illini wobbled today, and it was surprising to see in this game for sure.
All right, we'll talk about a few of the bright spots in this game, one issue with this team, and then we'll talk about a huge week coming up, really a huge 3-game stretch coming up for Illinois. But first, let's hear from one of our great sponsors. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year?
Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active and busy lifestyle. And with over 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. So you can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. And Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. So reach your goals this new year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Illini50off and use code Illini50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Illini50off at factormeals.com/Illini50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
All right, Derek. One thing I want to bring up, and I wrote this in the quick hits. Tomislav Visic was so good to start the year, but the physicality of the Big Ten certainly seems to be getting to him. During Big Ten play, 8.3 points, shooting 38% from the field. That efficiency is the number that bothers me. Usually he's been a good rebounder. He's been a good defender. I thought he was great defensively against Penn State, but they need some offense from him. Like he is so important to their offense, and obviously missing KJ today, that pick and roll game between them, pick and pop game between them, I think really helps him. But just the physicality on the block, like he is not finishing. He's got to learn to deal with that more. And I know he's played professional ball, but it doesn't look like it right now.
It's obvious. Yeah, there's no doubt he is not playing through contact all that well around the basket against the legit high major teams and in the Big Ten, the physicality and you gave the stat as far as field goal percentage overall, but if you look at Ken Pom, 2-point field goal percentage on the season, 62%, but in Big Ten play is 46%. And for a big man, you always want that above 50%, given how many shots are around the basket and whatnot. So that's been something that certainly hurts you. And even some attempts that haven't, or some usage or entries to him that haven't resulted in shots, he's kind of like had a back down that then he either throws out or he just kind of gets knocked off balance. And that's something that I don't know that you change that immediately in the middle of the season. Part of it is maybe just a mentality of playing with more just tenacity and trying to play through. And look, he's facing Merez every day, so it's not like he hasn't gone against that. And like Brad said, he has legitimately gone against grown men overseas, but they need more of maybe just playing with a fire under your butt around the basket. I like to see him
try and go dunk on somebody.
Yeah,
he's so long. Right. He's so long. Like I just like to see him go dunk on somebody when he gets the ball 5 feet from the basket.
No doubt about that for sure. And I think maybe you look for some more high post stuff with him too. I mean, that's kind of maybe more comfort zone. He looks more comfortable facing the basket than he does back to the basket. And defensively, this was an outlier for him because recently he has been playing really well as a rim protector. Was great against Penn State. Today, obviously not, and he wasn't alone certainly either.
Yeah. All right, 1999 super chat from Def. Brad suddenly allowing booty ball with Ben seemed to turn him around overnight. Feel I didn't see that enough today. Hope to add post entry to Tommy, initiating inside out offense since Brad historically doesn't run many sets. So yeah, Def's hitting on one of my bright spots. That's Ben Rickhouse. 15 points, 6 of 11 shooting, made 3 of the Illini's 7 threes. The rest of the team shot 4 for 24 today. Ben was 3 of 8. So that's 3 out of the last 4 games. He has gotten into double figures and I think over 15 points in those games. Also rebounding, like 5 rebound nights, pretty good for Ben Rickhouse, given where he was before that. But I was telling you before they got to get more touches to Ben Rickhouse, and they just didn't do that enough. I thought until like way late in the game where Ben had to shoot some like off dribble, pull up 3-pointers, just try and get them back in the game. But I think they need to run more through him because he's a really good player. And I think those post-ups, those booty balls with him, you're not going to run it every play, Derek, but I do think when you need a bucket, it's good kind of wrinkle to go through.
No doubt about it. And you get those switches that he get back guys down. And I think with Kylan really struggling to play make for the offense today, maybe a little bit more of try to put the ball in Ben's hands. And not that he's had many opportunities to kind of spray it and initiate the offense through, but that's something to grow on and build on for sure. And I think that out of the timeout there in the first half, the play that Coach Werner drew up, he comes off the screen and a handoff to Tommy and pops that three, and maybe more dictated action to have him coming off screens and getting chances to shoot threes. Because otherwise, there were a number of examples where the ball just stuck on the perimeter and guys off the ball were just standing and watching. And early in clock, Kylan taking pull-up threes, which, again, we can say it over and over again, although he doesn't even make them. He's been a good shooter in his career. This year has been a big exception. He has struggled from the three. But some of the pull-ups, when you're 0 for 4 from three, maybe don't take that fifth one early in the shot clock. And Brad was really upset with him on one of them. I think it was that fifth miss. And I would have liked to see Ben get those clips up if you could run some more plays, sets, whatever it might be to get in the ball, because he was going while a number of your other guys just certainly weren't.
Did you take this as a positive Will Riley game? Like, there was a moment in the second half where he was kind of keeping them afloat. Ended up with 7 points, 3 of 7 shooting. I think 0 of 3 from three. He's got 5 3-pointers since December started. Not good. Not very good.
Right.
He just continues not miss there. But there's an aggression to him tonight. And the and one got called back for a travel call that I thought was a poor call, and Illinois just seems to fold after that. But there were some moments I really liked from Will. And I was hoping, man, if that and one counted, like, is this the breakthrough for him? Because they needed a Will Riley breakout game, and they didn't get it fully, but there were some moments, Derek, that I was like, okay, that's encouraging.
I was encouraged too. Yeah, I think off the dribble stuff that he was able to do. We know that the catch and shoot from three and that kind of stuff, even though as well he gets caught into some of the step back off the bounce. Just perimeter shooting has not been there for him. And after he started to get cooking a little bit, he did take kind of a wild wing three that was maybe a heat check or whatever it might have been. But I did it felt like he was decisive and a lot more under control off the dribble today, and was able to make some little floater, get to the basket, go through contact at one point. And yeah, I mean, that probably should have been, I haven't seen the replay, but it's not a travel, it's an and one finish for him that ends up getting called the other way. So I think it was a point of potential growth for him, and maybe a sign that he's coming out of it a little bit and just maybe finding a different way to do it. And that is something, he's multi-skilled offensively, and you still want to see the outside shots go when he's going to take them, because he's definitely going to. But maybe it is some plays off the bounce when he's not too reckless with it, because sometimes it's frantic. And here recently, his offense just in general looks a little sped up and frantic. But today it was more clean, and I liked some of the plays he made. And again, like, circle back, he made a great delivery to Tommy on a cut, and Tommy just smoked the finish. So I thought he had some good signs for sure.
Derek, I want to ask this question. I'm going to preface it because you could see games like Oregon or Arkansas where this team just goes off from three. And even Alabama, they're 10 of 30, right? Are you worried about this team shooting at all? I mean, 22% tonight, 19% against Washington from three, Missouri 31%, Wisconsin 30%, Tennessee 17%. I know shooting's not consistent. It comes and goes, and that's why the defense has been so good. But I expected this team to shoot a little better, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as expectations over the course of a season, definitely expected that. I think Kylan's struggles have certainly hurt you. Will here recently, no doubt. Trey's an okay shooter and is probably never expected to do a whole lot beyond that. But and then, KJ is your 41, 42% three-point shooter, so that not having him has hurt a lot. And there have been games where it's like, especially down the stretch of, I think, like the Northwestern game, like, he's the only guy that you'd want taking threes. Everybody else was doing very little from that. So am I worried about it? I still think and understand the methodology of, like, open threes, in rhythm threes we want to take and all of that. But and some of them are going to come early in the shot clock. So, but 30 plus threes is a lot to take, and only to make 6 or 7 tonight.
7 tonight, yeah.
That's that's hard to do. And maybe there just needs to be the end game pivot. Maybe it's a feel thing about whether they're going down or not early and trying to put fouls on people. Love, when Trey White can go to the basket, especially on the break, that's a great method for Illinois offensively right now. You got to get more stops to be able to run. That's always a thing. But did think they were settling some tonight. And in general, they need to make them at a higher clip.
I just also want to shout out Dre Gibbs-Allhorn. Plays so damn hard. 11 points, and I hit a couple threes himself. So him and Ben combined for 5 of the 7 threes on 14 attempts for them. And then the rest of the team was, let's see here, 2 for 18. So those two carried it from 3 tonight. But he continues to play really, really hard. This is a big stain on the resume, Derek. A quad 3 loss for Illinois at home. USC has played better here recently, but that hurts. Both in your Big Ten title contention, because you're now 2 games behind Michigan State and Michigan, but also on your resume. Like today, do you go from like a 3 seed to a 4 seed after that loss? That's potentially what this loss can do to you. Now you got to go make up for it. And boy, you got some great opportunities this week as you go on the road at Indiana. And then you go on the road. That's quad 1 chance. And obviously at Michigan State, it's a quad 1 opportunity. Then you're home against Maryland. So you got a chance to make up for it, but you also got a chance to lose further ground in the Big Ten. So huge week ahead. And for me, the biggest thing is get Kaspers's forearm healthy. Like you need that guy for this week ahead.
Yeah, that's obviously the inflammation that he's dealt with. You got to get that swelling down, and whatever it is, like you said, to get him right and get him back out there is going to be huge. And 2 really tough road environments. I know Indiana still is kind of pales in comparison to kind of the preseason expectation, but they have won 5 in a row, albeit against a little bit of a lighter schedule since getting just drubbed by Nebraska on the road. But going to Bloomington is always challenging. Balo's playing tremendous, and I think the interior matchup with Tommy, and we're talking about physicality, like that's a lot of dude to deal with down around the bucket. So Merez, can he stay out of foul trouble? Can Tommy play physical enough to battle with him? Luke Goody, is he going to have a night from 3? Miles
He's playing well lately. Luke Goody, 28 points the last 2 games, heading to tonight's game against Iowa.
Yeah, and they've needed it. They've really needed it without Renew. So that's something that's been big for them. And then Michigan State, they've been more quality, especially their numbers, than I would have expected for them going into this year. It's an athletic team. It's a physical team. They actually led Illinois in conference play and defensive efficiency. Illinois was 2. Michigan State was 1 going into today. So a team that can really lock up and make it tough for you to score. And that's another place, the A zone and having the students back, I would imagine, for that one. So big opportunities to make up for this, because you're talking, especially for MSU, big quad 1 chance. Indiana might still be a quad 2. But
it'd be quad 1, top 75, right?
You're right. You're right.
So it'd still be quad 1.
You're right. And you got to hope that Muss can get a little bit of the Muss bus spinning in the right direction to make this potentially a quad 2 instead of a quad 3. But it is reminiscent of Maryland last year. You don't have Shannon, you lose to Maryland, and Maryland goes sub 500 overall last season, and that was Illinois obviously made up for it enough to be a 3 seed, but this one hurts for sure.
Yeah, this one does hurt. Well, appreciate everybody listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. We'll have more from this game coming up. Derek will have player grades. Also, a ton of football recruits in attendance today. Some big priorities. We'll have updates on that as well. But for Derek Piper, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.